I just realised that this is the wrong side. I was meant to cut this side, not this side. Good stuff. Good stuff.
So far I've pulled apart some pallets, smashed out a ton of nails, built a couple of walls, and knocked up not one, but 2 little benches. So I have even more workspace to make a mess on, and now I'm building, yes, another workbench. A 3rd workbench. I know, it's what you've always wanted. Why, you ask? Why don't I just get to the fun and exciting pallet wood projects, where all the fancy tools are and all the hilarious mistakes happen? Don't you worry, dear viewer, they are coming. However, right now, what I need in my little workshop is a big ass table to put even more crap onto. Because why have all your much needed items neatly in one place when you can have them strewn chaotically across the workshop? Anyway, here's my table. It's big and it took me longer than I expected to build it, and you'll see why a little bit later on. Enjoy. So I started off strong with a kind donation of framing wood from a friend. They're moving back home to Dutchland, so they didn't need it anymore. So they generously threw it my way. Out of that, I ended up getting around 16 lengths of 4x4 and 5 lengths of 10x4, all sitting at a tasty 2.5 meters long. I managed to smuggle these into the workshop and onto one of my freshly made benches, ready to take up as much usable and convenient workspace as possible, because I don't have a wood storage yet, and I like to punish myself. Technically, I do have plenty of wood storage. A lot, actually. Some would even say too much. But it's all a long way from my workshop, and I don't believe in cardio, so inconvenient workbench it is. I recently picked up this piece of construction plywood from my local supplier, and conveniently it happens to be 2.5 meters long. Sometimes things just go your way. This table is going to be the main hub of activity in my workshop, so it needs to be fairly sturdy. It also is going to be the new home for my table saw, so it needs to be big and long and wide. I'm also a large Australian man, so the table needs to be tall. I've settled on a nice 80 something centimeters, not accounting for the plywood, so a nice round 80-ish. This gives me plenty of space for storage down under, and it's also not so high that it makes me look like a toddler sitting at a big boy table. For the tabletop frame, I cut some handsome little 45s and whacked them all together. Now, if you're anything like me and you suck at joinery, here's a pro tip I picked up a while back. If you're cutting 45s or any joint and you have a cheap miter saw, or you're just not very good at cutting stuff, get yourself a pole saw, clamp the 2 pieces together that you want to join, and just cut down the joint. This takes off a tiny bit from both sides, and voila, you have a nice tight joint, and the added bonus that anyone who sees it will have the illusion that you know what you're doing. After tightening up all the joints, I measured out the stretches. I want to have plenty of support, as this is a big table and my plywood is pretty bent, so I need to flatten it out with extra stretches. Here's a fun fact. Not only does my joinery need work, but so does my math. Okay, it's 1, 2, 3. But where does this one go? That's 62.5. That's 62.5. That's 62.5. Math. I marked out the correct positions and carried on with my mortises. I probably could have gotten away with just some screws, but I'm a woodworker now. Everything has to be overdone. What I'm doing here is cutting out the mortises. Instead of taking forever to do it using a chisel and a hammer, What I did was I set the depth of my skill saw to the depth that I needed, and then I just cut out a bunch of satisfying little biscuits. It's easy to take out. You just peel them out with your fingers, chip them out with a chisel or use your teeth, whatever, and it gives you the exact height you need. All you then have to do is clean up the joint with your chisel and she's good to go. Rinse and repeat, and you got yourself some beautiful little tenons. Are they tenons? I don't know what they're called. But you got some holes that are what you need. It was around this time that I realised this build would take a touch longer than I expected. I thought a few days, maybe a week, as I got kids to entertain, wife to keep happy, and I'm pretty slow. I'm still getting used to all this stuff. However, if you're not aware, Sweden, where I live, is a very special place. Not only are you within yelling distance of a moose at all times, we also have very long winters, short nights, and an inconvenient amount of snow. Right now, it's early March. The springtime, where the bluebells emerge from the ground and birds are tweeting and life is springing back into action for the warmer months. Well, if you're in a normal part of the world. Well, that's what should have been happening. Here in Sweden, however, we don't get spring. We get second winter. So instead of pretty spring flowers and the tweeting birds, we got snow. And lots of it. So safe to say, while second winter was rolling around to laugh in our faces as we yearned for summer, I was stuck inside because my little fingies don't like -20 in an unheated workshop. A few days went by, the temperatures went back up, my fingies thawed out, and I went back to the workshop. So winter has come, winter has stayed, and with the stretchers in place,
It's time for some legs.
this is where those big sexy 10x4s come in. These are going to be my legs. I'm going to have 6 spaced evenly around the table, and because my workshop is over 100 years old and built by old Swedish hillbillies, the floor is not very flat. So I'll be adding in some adjustable feet so we can keep that bad boy level. To join the legs, I used a half lap joint. This is a simple joint that's easy, strong and effective, and I'll be making it look much harder than it should be by using the wrong tools, using them badly, and being a complete and utter amateur. But in the end, I got the job done, and that's the main thing, right? To keep the legs from snapping off of the joints, and to make sure this table is extra sturdy for my clumsy little bum, I repeated the half lap process on the lower half of the legs for the stretchers to sit in. I threw in a few more 45s on the stretcher corners to match the top, and bish bash bosh, my pile of free lumber and plywood is really starting to look like a table. All I got to do now is smash in some feet, screw in some bolts, and she's good to go.
I finished it! Finally, after second winter, after all the hiccups, after my tripod breaking, now I've finished the table. I can use it. I can put it in place and I can do what it's designed to do.
Eventually.
Oh, I forgot the sanding. I hate sanding.
Well, what's there to say about sanding? It sucks, but it's got to be done. Tell you what, I'll do all the hard work and you just watch this montage.
One eternity later.
This is before, and this is after. Before, after. Before, after. Lovely.
And with the sanding finally done, it's time to put it back together. I was going to glue it back together, but I don't think I'm quite finished with this table yet. I have plans for it in the future. I'm going to add things to it, probably going to need to take it apart, and I do want to take the top off eventually and put a nicer one on once this one gets all scuffed up and yuck. So I didn't glue it, I just screwed it. Finally, I now have a table. I took it from unwanted wood to strong and sturdy workbench. Now all I got to do is the good stuff. The finishing. And to finish off strong, I'm going to get out my nice new router, the one that Santa got me. I'm going to throw on a nice edge to it. This is going to help protect the edge so that it doesn't get all scuffed and broken and chipped, and it also makes it look a little bit nicer. Makes it look like I planned it all along. I was going to stain it. I was going to put a nice glossy sort of finish on it to make it look pretty. But we are still going through second winter. Been about a month and we're still seeing -15, and it just doesn't go well when it comes to a wax or anything really. Everything freezes. It is horrendous. So it's done and on to something else. Cheers for watching.